Hello, everyone. Today's lesson connects theory to practice. You'll learn to observe, analyze, and apply psychology concepts to real classroom situations. Observing children in their environment helps teachers understand how surroundings, development, and support affect learning. These observations guide theory based decisions and lead to more effective and differentiated instruction. So let's jump in with our anticipatory set. There are three short videos here. You'll see one with the child interacting with a pet, children playing together, and a child completing some sort of homework or reading with an adult. So ask yourselves these initial questions when you're observing. What behaviors do you notice? How might the environment influence learning? We're starting with real life scenarios. Notice not just what the children do, but how the environment shapes their actions and engagement. So now we're going to dive in a little bit deeper to the theory, engagement and learning, the child developmental stages, and of course, differentiation. So let's review some key theories and stages and think about how each apply to the scenarios that you observed and that you will observe. So, behavioralism. This explains learning as a result of reinforcement and punishment. Behaviors that are rewarded, such as praise or encouragement, are more likely to continue, while behaviors followed by negative consequences are less likely to occur. Adults can shape learning by providing feedback, praise, or a consequence. So let's look at social learning. Social learning theory explains learning through modeling and imitation. Children observe and learn by what they're observing and what they're watching others do, whether it's adults, peers, or whoever. They're going to watch and copy, especially when the modeling is admired or being rewarded. So let's look at the cognitive development, the child development stages. Piaget explains that this is how children's thinking changes as they grow. Children move through stages that affect how they reason, solve problems, and understand the world. Learning expectations should match the child's thinking ability. This is why you have to have differentiation as well. Erikson poses that psychosocial development, such as emphasizing emotional growth and social relationships, also come at various stages. And this involves a challenge, such as being independent or confident, and this shapes their personality and their motivation. So, once again, Erikson described psychosocial development by emphasizing emotional growth and social relationships. Now, Vygotsky emphasizes learning through social interaction and support. Children learn best when tasks are within their zone of proximal development and when adults and peers provide scaffolding to help them succeed. So, when a child stays focused and on task, that's attention. When they're willing and interested in the learning, that's motivation. When they continue, even when the task is challenging, that is persistence. And all of this refers to engagement. And this is how a child is in learning. Engagement can be observed through behaviors such as sustained focus, effort, or signs of frustration. Learning theories explain why behaviors happen. Developmental theories explain what is appropriate for a child's age, and engagement shows how children are involved in their own learning. Now, let's do a think aloud. Read the prompt. A child completes homework with an adult. The adult offers praise, which is reinforcement, scaffolds the task, which is Vygotsky, and adapts support based on the child's developmental stage. Remember that observation is data, not judgment. We have to match our expectations to the developmental readiness of our students. We also want to compare home environments and school settings. Notice how the environment is connected and the behavior and engagement all show the developmental knowledge of the students that you observe. This is why checking for understanding throughout your lesson is so important. So let's look at a few questions here. Which theory best supports or explains a child imitating a peer? You guessed it, it's social learning theory because they observe and they learn through observing and modeling others. How does adult presence affect engagement during homework? Well, anyone who's done tutorials or has seen a child at home with their parent there knows that adult presence typically increases engagement because there's some structure there. There's also some reinforcement and there's scaffolding, though it can also introduce frustration if the support is mismatched to the child's needs. Why is that? Well, behavioralism states that adult influence engagement through praise, feedback, and consequence, which can reinforce on task behavior. But from Vygotsky, his perspective is that adults scaffold learning by breaking tasks into manageable steps, like chunking, and gradually releasing some of that responsibility onto the child. This shows an adult where they can offer praise, adjust the support, and respond to the child's developmental level. This is what you'll be doing in your classroom, which directly affects attention, persistence, and emotional regulation. What behaviors indicate motivation or frustration? Is there sustained attention? Is the child persistent? Does that child have a positive emotional response, like showing interest or enthusiasm? If they do, these are positive motivation indicators. Now, on the contrary, what if a student or a child is avoiding the task or just flat out refusing to do it? Is there any emotional distress? Are they crying, sighing, rolling their eyes? Are they irritable? Then we also have to look at their focus. Are they giving up? This decreased focus and emotional distress and the avoidance of the task shows frustration indicators. Why, do you ask? This is because engagement is observable through attention, motivation, persistence, and emotional responses. When children are motivated, they stay involved and make repeated attempts. When they're frustrated, behavioral and emotional signals communicate unmet needs or challenges. Again, remember that observing these behaviors provides data that informs differentiation and instructional decisions. So remember to use theory and developmental concepts whenever you're observing. Now, in class, we did a small little activity where you had to observe either a child with a pet, child with a peer, child with an adult. And you're going to use the observation chart or rubric, if you will. This will help you to identify the environment, the theory, their developmental stage, their level of engagement, and what differentiation is needed. It's always best when you're working together to analyze your scenario or your group that you're observing, and then use this chart to help you organize your thinking. And remember that adults shape learning habits. Next, let's use this observation rubric. It breaks down what you would be observing in the environment with theory, with the developmental stages, the cognitive levels, the social stage that they're in, or even their emotional stage. And then it also gives you some cues on the engagement. How is their attention, their persistence, their motivation? And then again, we always have to come back to differentiation. What supports or accommodations or adaptations are we using, or that might be needed? And here's a little trick. Use these when you're observing once you get to your block classes. So your homework is to use the observation chart or rubric. It's to observe a child in each of the scenarios with the pet, with peers, and with an adult. You can write a reflection connecting the environment, the theory, the development, the engagement, and differentiation. And remember, you can submit your assignment in various different ways because that is including uh, and utilizing differentiation. And just another thought, remember that you're to observe and reflect, focus on analysis, not just a description. So now let's look at some differentiation. Same task, just different supports. Providing templates, using sentence stems, which I'm going to show you a bunch in just a moment, and allowing the choice in the outcome of the product of the assignment that you're giving. Whether it's, even if it's a reflection, you can do it written, orally with audio, or creating a chart or doing some sort of slideshow. Differentiation isn't just for children, it's for you too as learners. Now, here's some an observation thing to think about. Moving from observation to instruction. What did you see? What does the theory say? And how should your teaching be adjusted? Remember to reflect and to apply, which, by the way, is a Bloom's taxonomy higher order thinking word. So, some other questions to think about are: which environment best supported learning? And how will these observations inform your future teaching? Reflect again on what you learned. Observation is the foundation for effective, differentiated instruction. And remember that great teaching begins with careful observations. Observation is your professional responsibility as the educator. All right, now here are some sentence stems. As promised, you can screenshot or save this for later, but I've given you some regarding environment, learning theories, developmental stages, engagement, and differentiation. Here are some closing thoughts and a key takeaway. Great teaching begins with careful observations. Remember, you're going to be observing your students throughout the day, throughout the assignment, throughout the lesson. Observation is your professional responsibility. I can't emphasize that enough. All right, everyone. Thank you for watching. And if you found this helpful, be sure to like it, to subscribe, to save it for later, share it with another future educator or early career educator, and I'll see you guys in class.